The Terrifying Lies podcast with music and stories by Craig Nybo. Greetings, friends, and welcome to this intra-season episode of the Terrifying Lies podcast. I'm your host, Craig Nybo. I'm currently busy putting together something that I think you're going to love for the upcoming season, season 5 of the show. But in order to not leave you high and dry, I've decided to place a few special episodes between seasons. Enter the Freestyle Gargoyles. This is an experiment I and some friends concocted several years ago, where we get together as musicians, invite a few authors into the studio, and have them read a short original story while we improvise a soundtrack. The results are pretty chaotic, to say the least, but a few moments of brilliance always shine through. It's pretty avant-garde, and I think interesting. Here's a byproduct of the Freestyle Gargoyles. For us musicians, it has a cleansing effect, as if we're getting something out of our systems. Last night, my band got together for a rehearsal. We're working on a half and half show for an upcoming costume party. We'll do half as Mad Max-style apocalyptic warriors, then head to the green room and change into our pirate costumes for the second half. I know, we're a bit eccentric. Anyways, the music last night at rehearsal sounded unusually tight. We were on, and it felt great. Just last Friday, we did a Freestyle Gargoyles experiment. I'm going to play you one of the stories shortly. Rob, the guitar player, said, "I think Freestyle Gargoyles busted something loose last Friday. I'm playing better tonight than usual." I have to concur with Rob. As a musician, I find that the Freestyle Gargoyles purges out a lot of loose debris, musically, emotionally, physically. I don't know how it works, but I know this. I always feel better after doing a session with the Gargoyles. Here's how the Gargoyles works. Once you perform with the group, you become a gargoyle for life. We were happy to induct 4 new members of the clan last Friday. My longtime friend Nate Peck, who conducted the experiment, and authors Nick Montalongo, Blake Castleman, and Corinne Larinaga. I'm going to commit the next few intra-season episodes to the Freestyle Gargoyles. For today, I give you returning gargoyle J.C. Chambers III, with the following musicians: Keith Moon on drums, me on bass, Rob Griffin on guitar, my brother, science fiction Larry Nybo on keyboards, Aaron Osminski on trombone, Rick Neff on tenor sax, and Brandon Tucker on trumpet. All conducted by new gargoyle Nate Peck. With no more delay, I present the Freestyle Gargoyles, featuring J.C. Chambers III.
Welcome to Freestyle Gargoyles 2024. It's great to have you here in the studio and those of you joining us at home. We've been doing this for lots of years now. A lot of people don't know this, but this started with the original Greek theater when they wore masks and they told the story, and the orchestra behind them made it up as they went along. Just like I made that story up. That never happened. But I hope you enjoyed tonight. We've got 6 wonderful authors that we're going to bring up. If you've never been here before, we play music behind the author, try to gel with what their story is, and usually it turns out pretty awesome. And sometimes it's chaotic, which is also pretty awesome. So once we get going, we're going. And if you haven't been here and you're going to perform tonight, once you performed, you become a Freestyle Gargoyle for life, which means you're welcome to come back anytime and do this every time you want to, anytime. And I just hope you enjoy the show. My name's Nate. I'll be conducting tonight, and we'll introduce the band later on. But sit back and enjoy, and we'll call up our first author once we get a group going here. Thanks.
Noi pedaled along the red clay road, barely shoving down one foot after another. The sun glared on his neck and shoulders, sweat stinging his eyes. In his hand, he clutched a faded photograph against the hot, rusty metal of the handlebar. Dusty, empty rice fields stretched around him for kilometers beneath a cloudless sky. The countryside barren, but for a darkened, man-made mountain rising out of the earth at the end of the road. It was an open-air landfill, a castle of refuse, where all old and forgotten things eventually found their way. It was said that the Mangon Kayat, guardian of the garbage dump, would grant a wish to whoever presented it a sufficient offering alongside a picture of what they sought. For Noi, that was the picture of his older brother Goon and the wicker rotten ball they played with as children, their names displayed boldly in black marker on its surface. A wide drainage ditch encircled the landfill, acting as the moat to the Mangon Kayat's domain. Within its bounds loomed the unearthly crags of trash, at the center of which rose its highest peak. That was where the Noi would find the lair of the Mangon Kayat. Noi stepped off his bike and adjusted the straps digging into his shoulders. On his back, he carried a clay pot filled with tributes for the great trash drake. Noi had scrounged for the past week in alleys and gutters, gathering the fruit peels, garbage wrappers, and animal droppings that would form his offering to the Mangon Kayat. He had been certain to include plenty of dragon fruit peels, as those were most favored by the Mangon spirits. Still, there was no way to know if the guardian dragon would accept Noi's request, no matter the contents of his tribute. He glanced back the way he came. Bangkok's skyline glistened like a jewel. He could still return and find a good bedding spot near the market before nightfall. It was said that going any further than this, well, it was said that dragon spirits were unpredictable at best. Noi set his jaw and faced his quest. He'd come this far, he would not turn back now. With a heave, he lifted the bicycle over his head and descended trepidly into the drainage ditch, its concrete base blackened with sludge. His bare feet squelched on slime and muck as he slid up to his ankles, then his knees, then his chest. The water was a dark greenish brown with instant noodle wrappers and bamboo bits floating like islands in a river. The moat's odor was rank. Only a year ago it would have been enough to make Noi vomit. Now it only drew a grimace. After this, though, he wouldn't be allowed near the market for a week. He ascended from the ditch drenched with sewer water. Placing his bicycle at his side, he entered the domain of the trash drake. The garbage piles rose up around him, forming the twisted walls of a labyrinth. Motorcycle tires, spokes, and ancient bicycles not unlike his own formed the base of these mountainous walls. Toaster ovens, diapers, beer bottles, cardboard cartons, and plastic bags formed the layers of rising sediments. Noi scrutinized each article he passed, hopeful to find his quarry without risking an encounter with the drake or the spirits guarding the way. The path twisted and turned, guiding him deeper into the bowels of this maze of refuse. The sun hid behind the peaks of these crags, casting him into hot, swollen shadow before bursting back out with his heavy rays, causing the metal scraps to steam with heat. Noi rounded a corner and found himself at a fork in the path. It was only then, when he had stopped moving and his bicycle had stopped creaking, that he could hear a quiet noise not unlike the pitch of a slowly closing door. Creak. Noi whipped about, clutching the handlebar and seat of his bicycle, and looked for the source of the noise. The sound ceased. There was nothing behind him. Heart hammering in his chest, Noi took the right path. He no longer inspected each piece of garbage, but rather moved with all haste toward what he hoped was the center of the landfill. A chorus of squeaks and metallic groans echoed in the chasm, ringing against the metal cans and ruffling the plastic bags. They crescendoed in pitch and volume, sending a sheet of goosebumps across Noi's skin despite the magnificent heat. He looked back one more time. In the very midst of the wall behind him, a fan blade started to move. It, along with a strange conglomeration of pipes, garbage bags, cups, and sludge, separated itself from the wall of refuse and stood in the shape of a man twice Noi's height. The fan formed his face, rotating faster and faster, flinging bits of slime and muck. Its hands were broken pencils, scissors, and knives. Its feet tuned to shape and motorbike tires of different sizes. A garbage golem. It lumbered toward Noi several feet at a time. He jerked around, jumped on his bicycle, and launched himself in a mad rush without looking back. The creature screeched again, and a shiver spiked from Noi's gut throughout his chest. Its thunderous footsteps crashed behind him, only moments from reaching out and rending him limb from limb. Noi came to a sharp corner and slammed his foot to the ground to break around it. His toes gripped wet mud and slime, and he skidded before crashing into the garbage wall. Articles of plastic and metal tumbled around him, striking him on the head and shoulders and on his clay tribute pot. When he shoved down on the pedals, his bike lurched and nearly toppled over. He spared a glance down. A great big nail was stuck in his front tire. He abandoned his bike, gripped his photo in hand, and ran. When he hit a dead end, Noi turned and sprinted up the side of the wall. He cut his hands and feet on glass and metal as he gripped broken bottles, the remains of old motorbike scooters, and planks stuck with rusty nails. A hot, sharp pain cut across Noi's left calf, and he cried out. The golem gripped his leg with a hand of knives, scissors, and pencils, sinking into his skin and drawing blood in deep gashes. Noi kicked at the golem with his other leg, smashing his bare foot into the fan, sending it tumbling to the ground. Noi ripped his leg out of the creature's flecking grasp and fled. It was only as he reached the top that he realized how close he really was to the lair of the Mangon Kaya. The peak of its mountain rose to touch the sky in the center of a wide clearing of red clay, the edges of which were encompassed by the very trash wall on which Noi stood. Noi unslung the straps from his shoulder, transitioning his tribute pot from his back to holding it in front of him. He plopped down and slid his rump down the incline. Trash gave way easily as Noi scrambled down the wall of garbage, threatening to send him tumbling. He clutched the jar to his chest like a newborn child and held his photo scrunched in his hand. His foot caught something, and he pitched forward. Noi let out a cry, wrapping his whole gangly body around the jar as he fell. He felt each bump, each jab, and each crunch on the way down. He came to a stop at the base of the wall, his head spinning and ears ringing. For a moment he couldn't breathe, his own tribute pinning down his chest. He rolled over, pushed the clay pot off him, and took in a desperate gasp of air. Noi glanced back. The golem had retrieved its fan head. He had only moments. He needed to make his sacrifice to the Mangon Kayat now. He lifted the miraculously intact tribute jar and carried it to the base of the trash drake's lair, a mountain of books, of tables, and unbroken glass with statues and pianos and works of art all discarded and forgotten. Mangon Kayat, cried Noi, the words heavy on his tongue. I summon. Wait, where was his picture? It wasn't in his hand. Noi twisted on bloody heels. The golem had already reached the bottom of the mountain, and at his feet, his photograph flapped like just another piece of trash. Horror racked him. He needed that photo, needed it for the trash drake to grant his wish. There would be no point in an offering without it. The golem paused, sensing Noi's desperation. It glanced down, peered at the image, then looked back at Noi. "You lose," it seemed to say, then stamped its entire foot down on the photo. "No!" Noi screamed. The fan in the golem's face slowed to a lazy rotation, considering Noi's words before it flickered back to full speed, and the monster twisted his tire into the clay, smothering the picture. "Stop!" He marched forward, reaching out with bloodied arms. "Stop, or I'll... He roared! And the Mangong Kayat roared with him. It was louder than lightning, with force that jolted him like a drop of thunder. Noi's hair whipped about him, caught in the sound wave, driblets of blood flinging off of his skin. The golem stepped back and gazed blankly past Noi. As the final vestiges of the dragon's roar died as an echo, it turned and stalked back to the wall of trash, where it collapsed into its individual parts, strewn across the heap. Noi held his breath as he turned to face the dragon, only to find it wasn't there. There was only the junk pile as tall as a spire. It was time. Noi scampered to his photograph, snatched it, and moved back to his tribute jar. He knelt before it, clapped his palms together, and formed a prayer posture. "Great and mighty Mangong Kayat," he whispered, "I summon you." The mountain exploded. The entire pile of trash moved and conjoined in motion, rippling and morphing into a long, sinuous form. A screech as powerful as a storm ripped through the air. Fishing poles, cue sticks, and bamboo sticks formed the bones. Glass panes came together to fashion the drake's wings. Its teeth were that of a piano. Its eyes were the screens of televisions, flashing black and white static, and its skin was a layer of thousands upon thousands of books. It perched itself upon what remained of its mountain and roared again. Noi scuttled away from his clay jar. It swayed his head back and forth, examining his tribute, the piano teeth clinking together thoughtfully. The trash drake let out a low growl like the grinding of a washing machine, and its TV eyes buzzed into a bright blue glow. After a long moment of consideration, it reared back, small sheets of paper flitting down in a flurry from its body. Then it struck down and enveloped the vessel in its teeth, crushed it in its mouth, and swallowed. The Mangong Kayat had accepted the tribute. Light-headed, Noi staggered forward toward the dragon and raised his photo with an outstretched arm. The trash drake peered at the picture, its television eyes blinking black and opening again to blue. "Please," Noi cried, "bring me this picture." The trash drake's countenance changed. Its eyes flickered to a violent red, and it let out a horrible shriek that sent another shockwave across the garbage mountains. Noi stumbled as bits of trash flew past him. He held the picture out and pushed forward, shielding his face with his other hand. "I don't understand," he pled. "Please, can you find it?" The Mangong Kayat bared its piano teeth and snarled at him, flapping its wings angrily. It lifted into the air and sent gusts of wind across its domain. Noi braced himself, falling to his knees and gripping at the clay with one hand while desperately brandishing his picture with the other. He closed his eyes against the stinging wind. "I beg you," he cried against the tempest. "It's all I have left! It's all I have left of my brother!" The tempest ceased. Noi glanced up. The Mangong Kayat hovered imperiously over its lair, his glassy wings shimmering in the sunlight. It shrieked again, and in Noi's heart he knew this would be the last time he would hear the dragon's voice. "No!" The Mangong Kayat tucked its wings and dove straight down. It hit the trash mountain and disappeared back into its individual parts. It was gone. Noi stared wide-eyed at the heap. He squeezed clay in between his fingers, grasping desperately for something to tell him that he hadn't come all this way for nothing. He cried to the uncaring sky, "Why? Why take everything from me? Gung is dead. He's dead and I have nothing." He collapsed forward, lacking even the strength to weep. There was nothing left to do except be burnt by that hateful sun. A tremble shook him. It was a soft, quiet movement, almost a tug, trying to get his attention. And despite the aching in his chest, Noi looked up. A tiny lizard with red, translucent wings was perched primly before him. It had startlingly golden eyes and bright green scales shimmering in the sunlight. Noi's gaze wandered to the object upon which the dragon rested, and his heart choked. There, beneath the spirit's feet, was his brother's wicker rotten ball. With the silent flap of its wings, the Mangon Kayat lifted off the ball, presenting it to Noi. He crawled forward and clutched it close. Through teary eyes, he found the faded marks where he and Gung had written their names. It was the same ball, and deep in his heart, a piece of him began to heal. His brother had been lost, but now a part of him was found by the trash drake.
Thanks for joining me on this intra-season episode of the Terrifying Lies podcast. I'm honored that you've decided to listen. I wish you peace, happiness, and prosperity in this turbulent world. Don't forget to treat someone extra kind as you go about your day. See you next time, and until then, I bid you sweet dreams. Or should I say, sweet nightmares. This has been the Terrifying Lies podcast. Please come again. You're welcome here.